Welcome to our guide on preparing for AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional exam. The course is supplementary content to our previously released practice questions, and we will cover these topics in Chapter 1, Study Strategy, and we will discuss effective learning method for different skill level, and Chapter 2, AWS Certification Exam Overview. In this section, we will introduce the guideline for Solution Architect Professional exam. In Chapter 3, Exam Statistics, and here we will explore the services and the scenario that frequently appear on the exam. And Chapter 4, the practice question set, we will provide an overview of our practice question set to help you prepare. So let's get started from the study strategy. In this section, we will explain learning the method for different certification levels. The AWS offers certification exams at the 3 levels: the foundational, associate, and professional. The foundational level is designed for beginners just starting to learn AWS. The associate level is for those with about 1 year of practical experience, and the professional level is for those with 2 or more years experience. And if you are a beginner preparing for foundational exam, we recommend starting from the video content that provides an overview of AWS services. The official AWS documentation can be overwhelming because it has a lot of information, which might be too difficult for beginners. To grasp the basics, we suggest using the packaged video contents like Udemy to get an overall picture. If you have the practical experience and already familiar with AWS, we recommend focusing on complementing your existing knowledge. If you are preparing for the professional level exam, you are likely to have already passed the associate level certification or have practical experience. In this case, we suggest slowly reading the documentation and consistently practicing with question sets to enhance your skills and knowledge. Generally, the video content contains more information than text data. It is said that 1 minute of video content is equivalent to cover 30 books in terms of the information volume. However, this comparison is about the amount of information, not the knowledge you can get. Watching the 1 minute video doesn't provide the same depth of knowledge as the reading 30 books. The video learning is typically passive learning style, while text-based learning, using, for example, the document, books, or practical question, is more active. For advanced learner, in particular, text-based learning tends to be more efficient. If you are preparing the professional level exam, you likely already have the basic knowledge. We encourage you to work with the comprehensive practice question set. As you progress in your AWS journey, adapt your learning style to match your growing expertise and increasing complexity of the material. Next, I'm going to introduce exam overview. And here is an overview of the AWS certification exam. As previously mentioned, AWS certification exam offered at 3 levels: the foundational, associate, and professional. And currently, there are no prerequisites for taking this exam, which means you can take them at any time based on your experience and skills. For example, you can take a professional level exam without holding an associate certification. In addition, AWS also offers specialized certification in advanced networking, machine learning, and security. And there are major changes made to the lineup this year. The database and the data analytics exam were discontinued, and the new data engineer associate certifications were added. And furthermore, the AI practitioner and the machine learning engineer associate were added. It's expected that AWS will continue to add or discontinue certification to align with the industry trends. At all levels, the exam consists of either the multiple choice or multiple response questions, where you will choose the correct answer from option A, B, C, and D. The professional exam has a duration of 180 minutes and consists of 75 questions. The exam fee is $300. Since the professional exam is a lengthy 3-hour test, it's very challenging to keep concentration. Before taking the exam, I highly recommend that you practice by timing yourself and getting accustomed to a 3-hour exam session. And this image shows the number of services covered in each exam. The cloud practitioner covers 128 services, associate covers 132 services, and the professional covers 158 services. The current exam guidelines have been in effect since 2022, and the number of the services has increased compared to that of the previous version. And at this time, AWS offers about 240 services, which means that the professional exam covers more than 60% of these services. According to the exam guide, the professional exam is designed for those with more than 2 years of experience. While you don't actually need to have the 2 years of experience, but I highly recommend you study thoroughly because the exam is challenging. The exam consists of the 75 questions, but only 65 of the questions will impact your score. In other words, 10 questions will not affect your score. And these 10 questions are used by AWS for research purposes. So therefore, you may encounter questions about services which do not appear in the exam guide. And the passing score is 750 out of 1,000. The exam covers 158 different AWS services. And next, I will introduce the exam domains. In the professional exam, the domains listed here are tested according to the respective weightings. In designing the solution for organizational complexity, the scenario involving the multi-region network infrastructure and the multiple organizations are tested. In this domain, the multi-account management, such as managing permissions and cost using the AWS organizations, AWS Control Tower, and the security-related tools are tested. Therefore, designing a new solution, you will be tested on implementing the services according to the specific business requirement defined in the question, as well as on global deployment, the business continuity, and the reliability design. And for the continuous improvement of the existing solution, you will be tested on understanding operational services and the strategy to enhance the security. And additionally, optimizing the cost and improving the reliability of existing AWS environment will also be covered. And for accelerating the workload, migrating and modernization, you will be tested on tools for migration from on-premise to AWS environment. And this includes understanding the differences between the tools for migration, application, and database and services. And finally, here is a sample question from the exam. The professional exam has very long questions and choices. It is very challenging to get the correct answer rate over 75% with a lengthy exam duration and the question text. And here is a sample question with 4 choices A, B, C, and D. And there are also questions where you need to select 2 or more 3 answers. About 30% of questions are multiple response, and they tend to be more difficult because you must select all the correct answers. Next, I'm going to introduce exam statistics. In this chapter, I'm going to explain services and the frequency of appearance and the requirements stated in the questions. And the first one is the services and the frequency of appearance. The current exam version is C02, which has been in effect since 2022. In the previous version, C01, the number of the services tested was 100, so the exam scope has significantly expanded. And for your reference, the number of services tested in the all-level exam also increased with the update. At this time, AWS offers over 240 services, and the number of the services continues to grow each year. And you can check the detail of the services tested in the in-scope AWS services and the future section of the exam guide. The section lists the services that may appear on the exam with a total of 158 services. And however, it's important to note that not all the 158 services will necessarily appear in the 75-question exam set. These are simply the services that have the potential to be tested. And based on our own research, about 40 to 50 services appear in the single exam set. Moreover, many of these services are repeatedly appeared in every exam. For example, the services like EC2, S3, the VPC, the Lambda, RDS, DynamoDB are repeatedly tested. And so therefore, as a study strategy, it is more efficient to focus on learning the main services and the features rather than trying to memorize the minor ones. And here is a summary of the 158 services that appear on the SAP exam, as well as the frequently asked services. So we will go into detail on each category. And firstly, let's look at the management and the governance category. The services marked as the frequently asked are those that appear multiple times within the single exam set. On the other hand, the services that are rarely asked might only appear once, if at all. In this category, the monitoring tools like the CloudWatch, CloudTrail, and the Config are commonly tested. And AWS organization is frequently asked services and often appear in the context of the service control policy and cost management. In the professional exam, the complex organization and the multi-account setup are main themes, so questions often combine AWS organization with control tower, IAM, transit gateway, and service catalog. In the context of operational automations, the AWS System Manager's automation feature and Patch Manager are frequently tested. Additionally, in the context of security, the parameter store is also commonly covered. While there are lots of services in the security, identity, and the compliance category, the most frequently tested ones are IAM, the KMS, and the Secret Manager and also. The IAM Identity Center and SDS also commonly appear in the exam related to the managing the permission for external account. AWS WAF, Web Application Firewall, often appear in the question about DDoS attack mitigation, particularly regarding the rate-based rules. Additionally, you may encounter the question about the firewall-related services and other security and threat detection services. The next is the storage. The most of the storage services listed here in the exam guide are comprehensively tested. In particular, you will be asked about the detailed feature of the S3, such as bucket policy, the cross-origin resource sharing, encryption, S3 endpoint, and transfer acceleration, so you need to be well prepared for S3. For EBS and EFS, you will be asked about their use in the multi-AZ environment. EFS is more commonly used in multi-AZ environment. And you will also occasionally be asked about the use of EFS and the FSX for Linux server and Windows server. The EFS is used in the Linux environment, while FSX for Windows server is used in the Windows platform. And for high-performance computing HPC environment, FSX for raster is used. And additionally, you may encounter AWS Backup and AWS Storage Gateway. And the Storage Gateway is used in the hybrid environment. In the compute and container category, the EC2, autoscaling, Lambda, ECS, Fargate, EKS, and the load balancer are frequently asked about. When the question includes the requirement to minimize the operational overhead, you should choose the serverless services instead of EC2. If you launch an EC2 instance, you will need to manage the server, which increases the operational overhead. And you will also often encounter the question involving the EKS and ECS in the context of operational overhead. Generally, EKS, the Kubernetes, has more operational overhead. A serverless architecture combining the ECS and the Fargate is very common in the exam. And regarding the load balancer, the ALB, Application Load Balancer, and the NLB, Network Load Balancer, are frequently asked about. The ALB operates at the application layer and can control HTTP traffic, making it frequently tested in the context of the security-related feature. All the services in the network category are frequently asked about. The Amazon VPC includes the security group, network ACL, VPC endpoint, IP prefix list, and more. In the professional exam, the multi-region networks are included in the theme, so edge computing services like the CloudFront and the Route 53 are frequently tested. And for Route 53, you will encounter the question about the different use of routing policy, such as geolocation routing, failover routing, latency-based routing, and geo-proximity routing. And regarding the security, you will often be asked about the differences between the direct connect and the VPN and the private ring. When the question requirement specifies that traffic should not be exposed to the internet, you cannot use the VPN connections. And the AWS Transit Gateway functions as a central hub in the multi-VPC environment. When there are hundreds of VPC, you should choose the transit gateway. And regarding the database, RDS, Aurora, and DynamoDB are the most frequently tested. In other words, other database services are rarely asked about. So I recommend thoroughly learning the features of these core databases. For RDS and Aurora, the questions often cover offloading read operation using the read replicas and using the promotion of read replicas to primary instances for disaster recovery purpose. Additionally, in case where strict RTO is required, there are frequently questions about choosing the Aurora's global database. A DynamoDB is also frequently tested. For DynamoDB, question often involves the DynamoDB accelerator, DAX, the DynamoDB streams, and the differences between the DynamoDB's on-demand mode and the provisioned mode. In application integration category, SQS, step function, and event bridge are frequently tested. In particular, SQS and event bridge are often tested in combination with the Lambda as part of event-driven architecture scenarios. Additionally, SQS is also tested on queue management such as dead letter queue, so it's important to understand the basic feature of SQS. Amazon MQ is sometimes tested in comparison to SQS. The Amazon MQ is used when you want to use an existing message queuing service like RabbitMQ. For example, if the question specifies the minimizing the operational overhead, you should choose SQS. If it states already using the RabbitMQ and wants to avoid the hassle of implementation, you should choose the Amazon MQ. In the front-end and the web mobile category, the API gateway frequently appears. The API gateway is often tested integrated with Lambda functions. Additionally, the features such as the usage plans, API keys are also commonly tested, so it's important to understand these detailed features as well. In the analytics category, the Athena, the QuickSight, the OpenSearch, and the Kinesis are sometimes tested. In particular, the pattern of analyzing the data stored in S3 bucket with Athena and visualizing it with the QuickSight frequently appears. The combination of S3 and Athena is easy to use because it is serverless and can be executed with simple query and making it more convenient than implementing the analytics tool like Redshift. If the question specifies the minimizing the operational overhead or the implementation effort, the combination of S3 and Athena is optimal. And additionally, the Kinesis data streams and the Kinesis data firehose are occasionally tested for processing the streaming data. The Kinesis is often tested in combination with the log streams and IoT. Regarding the migration and the transfer, the older services are tested well. Since the domain accounts for 20% of the exam, you need to understand the differences among these migration services. For database migration, DMS and SCT are used. SCT is the service that converts the schema between different database engines, while the DMS is a service that performs the database migration. Additionally, the DMS has the feature called the CDC, the Change Data Capture, allowing you to migrate the running database with minimal downtime. The AWS Snow family is a service that uses physical devices to migrate a large amount of data to AWS data center. From ordering to device to completing the migration, it takes about 10 days of the lead time. If you want to minimize the downtime, it's better to upload the data via the network or use AWS Data Sync. And regarding the AWS Application Migration Service, you will be asked about the differences between the agent-based and the agent-less migrations. It is important to know that using an agent provides more detailed data, but requires more effort to installation. And finally, categories such as end-user computing, media services, machine learning, developer tool, and IoT services are not frequently tested. Therefore, as long as you understand the basics, you should be fine. But sometimes in the context of IoT, a use case involving the combination of AWS IoT Core and the Kinesis to centralize the streaming data from IoT device may appear. So that's all for the explanation of the services tested and their frequency of appearance. By prioritizing the frequently tested services in your study, you can efficiently improve your scores. Next, I'm going to introduce the requirement stated in the questions. This is a sample question of AWS exam test. In the exam, you will often encounter the requirements such as highly cost-effective and minimizing the operational overhead. You need to choose the correct answer based on these requirements. On the next page, we have summarized the frequently tested requirements. And this graph summarizes the exam scenario and their frequency. The requirements such as the highest cost efficiency, the minimal operational overhead, and high availability, enhanced scalability, improved security are frequently tested. Additionally, these requirements are sometimes combined in the questions. On the next page, I will introduce the detail of each scenario. And first, you will often be asked questions that require selecting the most cost-efficient options. The overly excessive architecture unnecessarily increases the cost, so you should exclude them from your choices. And here, I will introduce some examples of solutions related to cost optimization. For computing costs, spot instances, reserved instances, and saving plans are frequently tested. You can achieve the significant cost savings by using the spot instances. However, since they can be interrupted, they are typically used for the scenario like a batch processing that only takes a few minutes. And you can get a greater discount by paying upfront with a reserved instance or saving plans. And for storage cost, you may encounter questions about the cost-effective options like S3 storage classes and lifecycle policy. And for database cost, the solution includes purchasing the reserved instances for RDS, using the all-as serverless, or using the on-demand capacity mode for DynamoDB. If the demand on the database changes, you can optimize the cost by using the serverless services. For networking, the CloudFront often comes up in the exam. The CloudFront can deliver cached content from the global edge locations. This allows you to deliver content to the end user without replicating the resources across the multiple regions, and which can have reduced cost. And when transferring the data between the VPC, you can avoid additional internet charges by using the VPC endpoint. And the direct connect generally has the high setup cost, so it's important to consider the requirement. A serverless architecture helps reduce cost. With a serverless architecture, you don't need to worry about the server management cost, making it more cost-effective. And the containers also come up in the cost optimization. The combination of ECS and Fargate are often appear in the serverless architecture. With a serverless architecture, you can achieve cost optimization, reduce operational overhead, and improve scalability. Regarding the cost optimization, the monitoring and the cost management tools are also frequently tested. The questions about the central cost managing use the AWS organization appears frequently. And for data analytics cost, S3 and Athena are often tested. By using Athena, you can easily perform the data analysis using the standard query. And lastly, solutions related to the tagging are also tested. You will often be asked about the solution using the AWS organization's SCP, the Service Control Policy, to prevent the creation of resources without tags. The second most frequently raised requirement is minimum operational overhead. By using AWS managed services, you can minimize the user-side management. Additionally, as previously mentioned, you can reduce your operational overhead by adopting the serverless services, which eliminates the need to manage the server. The combination of ECS Fargate, as well as the use of ECS and EKS, are frequently tested. And you can use IAC, infrastructure as a code, to simplify the definitions and the deployment of your infrastructure. The automation feature of System Manager is also frequently tested. Since System Manager offers many features that simplify server management, it will often appear in the context of operational simplification and automations. You can automate operation by combine the event bridge with the CloudWatch alarms and security detection services, which directly reduces the operational overhead. Additionally, if you have multiple VPCs, you can simplify network management by deploying the transit gateway. The next one is to ensure high availability. Although you may encounter terms like redundancy and resiliency in the question text, the solution remains focused on achieving availability. For high availability, the multi-AZ deployments are effective. For example, RDS instances can be configured with multi-AZ deployment. Additionally, the multi-region deployment allows you to handle the failure on the per-region basis. To ensure availability, it is important to eliminate the single point of failure and implement both multi-AZ and multi-region configurations. The health checks and the failover configuration for Route 53 and multi-region deployment often appear in the exam. and geographic proximity policy and the location-based policies for Route 53 are also frequently tested. Network high availability involves the VPN redundancy and having a direct connect backup. A backup and disaster recovery are also important for ensuring the availability. You may find the specific RPOs and RTOs in the question text and select the best options. In particular, the database backups and the AWS backups appear frequently in the exam. High availability solutions for content delivery, such as CloudFront and S3 transfer acceleration for data transfer between edge locations, are also commonly tested. And next is scalability. In a scenario where improving the scalability is necessary, such as when the number of accesses or traffic is expected to increase during the peak hours at certain times of day, it is important to manage the resources efficiently. By reducing the resources during the periods of the low traffic and increasing them only during the peak time, you can avoid unnecessary cost. A typical way of scaling is to use auto-scaling feature. With auto-scaling, you can increase or decrease computing resources and the database services as needed. And you can also expand data capacity with storage services, but it is important to consider that this may increase the cost. And you can adjust for increase or decrease in traffic using the load balancer or API gateway. When it comes to handling traffic fluctuation, a serverless solution allows AWS to automatically scale resources. And you can monitor a resource's utilization with CloudWatch and increase resources when specific thresholds are exceeded. If peak times can be predicted in advance, you can scheduling the policy to increase the resources at a specific time of the day, or you can use event bridges scheduling feature to increase resources only when needed. The next most frequently asked scenario is about security. And you will encounter permission controls like IAM and AWS Organizations SCP in the exam. The professional exam often includes the question about the security in multi-account environment, making the proactive guardrails with SCP in AWS organizations a common topic. The network security, including the VPCs and the firewall, is also frequently tested area. The private connections using the VPC endpoint and the WebACL in AWS WAF are often come up. In terms of data protection, you will sometimes be asked about the encryption at rest and encryption in transit. And many S3 features such as S3 bucket policy, access point, and server-side encryption are also included in the exam. And for threat detection and protections, for example, guard duty is also covered in the exam. The next one is performance. The performance optimizations include the network, database, and server performance. In the area of networking, it includes accelerating content delivery using the CloudFront, which can deliver cached content from global edge locations. and this improves the performance and the relatively low deployment cost, even if consumers are located in multiple regions. In the database area, the read replicas are frequently used. The read replicas are useful when querying the database from the data analysis tools, as they allow you to separate read and write operations. Read performance can also be improved by caching, using the services like Elasticache or DynamoDB Accelerator. And you can optimize the computing performance by choosing the optimal instance type as well as the auto-scaling. The minimal downtime is crucial in the context of CI/CD, the failover, and migration. In CI/CD, you can minimize the downtime by preparing the separate environment from the existing production environment and switching the traffic and in the blue and green deployment. The same concept applies to disaster recovery. You can minimize the RTO by preparing the similar environment in another region. However, the cost will be higher because two separate environments need to be maintained. The minimizing the downtime during the migration also appeared in the exam. For example, in the hybrid architecture, the solution involving the CDC, the Change Data Capture of Database Migration Service, or AWS DataSync for continuous data migration. The other requirements are often asked in the combination with the previously introduced requirement. For example, the compliance services are often asked together with the security and the monitoring services. So that's all for the explanation of the requirement. By understanding these frequently asked requirements, you can improve your study efficiency. And finally, I'd like to introduce the practice question set. And this video is supplemental content to Udemy's practice question set. I have released the 5 original question sets on Udemy for a total of the 375 questions. And this is a preview of Udemy's questions. When you start the test, you can take it just like a real certification exam. And after finishing all the questions or clicking the Finish the Test, you will see the correct answer along with the explanations. The explanation includes the reasons why each choice is correct or incorrect. You can get the coupon if you are interested. Please check the link in the overview section or Udemy's profile sections. So, we've come to the end of the video. I hope the content has been valuable to your learning journey. Thank you for dedicating your time with me, and I wish you success.